The darkness of space was endless, silent, cold. Yet across that silence came a sound no one expected, a cry for help. It was not a whisper, but a desperate scream carried on frequencies meant to reach anyone who might hear. The alien voice trembled, with fear, speaking words filled with panic, words that carried the weight of a dying world. Ships were burning, cities were collapsing, and hope was breaking apart. The message was clear. They were surrounded. Their people were dying. And if no one came, their entire race would vanish. For centuries, the galaxy had heard many distress calls. Most were ignored. Some were answered too late. But this one was different. It was raw. It was filled with terror so deep that even machines translating the voice glitched, unable to smooth the fear hidden inside. Somewhere out there, far away, from Earth, a people had cried into the void with no expectation of an answer. They knew the galaxy was cruel, that the stronger races would not risk their fleets. The enemy they faced was ruthless, an empire that grew by devouring weaker worlds. And so, in their final moments, the desperate chose to do what others would never dare. They sent their signal toward the most feared world of all, the death world, Earth. No one in the galaxy truly believed Earth was real. Stories of Deathworlders had spread like myths told in secret. They were spoken in hushed tones in the markets of alien worlds and whispered in command rooms of mighty empires. Some said the humans were monsters, shaped by a violent planet that forged warriors unlike any other. Others said humanity was extinct, destroyed long ago by their own hunger for war. But deep down, every alien commander feared the same truth. If Earth was still alive, if Deathworlders still walked among the stars, then no force in the galaxy could match them. And now, that myth was being tested. The alien SOS was aimed at Earth's hidden frequencies, ones only a Deathworlder could hear. A gamble, a prayer, a last chance. No one knew if humanity would respond. Perhaps Earth would remain silent, leaving the dying to face their fate alone. Or perhaps the legends were true, and the fleet would rise again, deep beneath Earth's oceans in bunkers that no satellite had ever found. Alarms began to flash. The call had arrived. Across hidden stations buried under mountains, within orbital platforms disguised as debris, and in silent outposts on the edge of the solar system, command systems activated for the first time in decades. The message spread faster than light inside encrypted channels only humans could access. In one secret base, old generals stared at the transmission. The alien voice shook as it begged for salvation. The words were nearly broken by static, but the meaning was clear. Their world was falling. Their children would not survive. They begged not for power, not for conquest, but for mercy. The room fell silent. The humans listened. And then, without speaking, they all knew the decision had already been made. Humanity would answer. But answering meant awakening something long kept in shadow. Humanity had not shown its power for generations. They had hidden, building in silence, preparing for a war they prayed would never come. Their fleets had been sealed away, their soldiers scattered into deep hibernation. To call them now was to unleash storms the galaxy had forgotten. Still, the message could not be ignored. Someone had begged for help, and no matter the danger, humanity could not turn away. In the void above Earth, massive structures began to stir. To any passing alien probe, they looked like asteroids, silent, lifeless, drifting rocks. But inside, reactors hummed awake. Hulls of black metal shifted, glowing lines of energy spreading across them like veins of fire. What appeared to be dead stone revealed its true shape. Warships, dozens, hundreds, each one larger than entire cities, forged for one purpose only: war. The Deathworlder fleet. Commanders, old and young, stepped into positions they had trained for all their lives. They had been raised knowing one day the call might come. They had studied every enemy, every weapon, every possible scenario, yet none of them had ever expected it to be real. Now, as the alien plea replayed in their minds, they felt the weight of destiny pressing down. The decision had been made. Humanity would rise. The galaxy would witness their return, and far away, on a world burning under the attack of merciless invaders, the desperate survivors still clung to hope. They did not know if anyone had heard them. They did not know if help was coming. All they had was silence in the stars and the knowledge that they had cast their last prayer toward a myth. What they could not know was that Earth had heard. And the fleet was already moving. The cry for help had summoned the Deathworlders, and nothing, not even the stars themselves, would remain the same again. For years, the galaxy believed Earth was quiet, perhaps even gone. No star maps showed its power. No trade routes listed its fleets. The empires laughed at the myths, saying humanity had been broken by its own world long ago. They thought Earth was weak, they thought wrong, because while the galaxy slept, humanity was building. Beneath the oceans, deeper than light could reach, massive structures had been hidden. Caverns carved into the crust of the Earth housed ships the size of mountains. They were kept silent, their engines cold, their hulls covered in layers of rock and metal that made them invisible to even the sharpest scanners. To the galaxy, these were nothing but geological formations. But to humanity, they were fortresses, waiting for the day the call would come, and that day had arrived. The alien SOS, filled with desperation, had activated protocols sealed for generations. Across continents, encrypted alarms sounded in bases no civilian even knew existed. In the icy wastes of Antarctica, a vast hangar door slowly opened, releasing steam into the air as the ice cracked away. In orbit around the moon, panels on craters shifted to reveal cannons the size of skyscrapers, silent but awake again. On Mars, red sand fell as something beneath the planet shook off centuries of dust. Earth's secrets were no longer secrets. In command centers hidden under mountains, men and women who had waited their entire lives for this moment stood at attention. These were not ordinary soldiers. They had been trained since birth, their families sworn to protect humanity's greatest secret. They had studied war not as a theory, but as destiny. Each of them had been told the same words since childhood. One day the galaxy will call, and when it does, humanity will answer. Now screens lit up with the alien SOS repeating over and over a cry of fear from across the stars. The commanders exchanged looks of steel. They did not see weakness in that voice. They saw a duty. Someone had called them. And when someone called, humanity did not hide. In the silence of space, structures that looked like drifting asteroids began to change. A rock cracked open, revealing the armored surface of a warship. Its hull was darker than the void, sharp edges cutting through the blackness of the stars. Lines of blue light ran across it, waking systems that had been cold for centuries. More asteroids shifted, breaking apart to reveal dozens of these giants. Together, they formed the first layer of the Deathworlder fleet. Each ship was unique. Some were built to crush planets, carrying weapons that could vaporize cities in seconds. Others were fast, hunters designed to chase and destroy enemy fleets. All of them carried the same symbol, Earth's crest, the mark of humanity's unity. They were not divided nations anymore. They were one people, one war machine, forged by a world that had never forgiven weakness. Inside one colossal ship, the flagship of the fleet, the crew stood in silence as the main screen replayed the alien message. A voice cried, "They are killing us. We cannot hold. Please. Anyone who hears." The commander, an old soldier with scars running across his face, stood with his hands behind his back. He had been waiting for this moment longer than he cared to admit. His voice was calm when he spoke, yet it carried the weight of thunder. Set course. Prepare the fleet. Someone called for us. We will answer. The crew did not cheer. They did not smile. They only nodded, their faces hard with resolve. They all knew what it meant. Once the Deathworlder fleet moved, the galaxy would change forever. The silence would end. The myths would be proven true, and no empire, no matter how strong, would ever see humanity the same way again. Engines roared to life, silent at first, then shaking the void itself. Blue fire spilled from the ships as they aligned. The fleet spread out, forming a wall of black steel and glowing energy. They were hunters awakening after centuries of sleep. Their prey would not survive. Far away, the desperate aliens still clung to life. Their cities were falling, their skies filled with enemy warships. They believed no one had heard their cry. But above Earth, in the shadows of its moon, the fleet was moving, and soon the galaxy would know what it meant when Deathworlders answered a call for help. The alien world burned. Fires consumed cities that once stood proud. Towers of glass and steel shattered under the bombardment of enemy cannons. In the skies, great enemy warships circled like vultures, raining destruction on what remained. The alien defenders fought bravely, but their weapons were too weak, their ships too few. One by one, their fleets broke apart, leaving only fragments drifting among the wreckage. The survivors on the surface could only watch their skies darken with smoke, praying their desperate call had reached someone, anyone. But no answer had come. Days passed, and the message repeated through the stars, unanswered. To the survivors, it felt like a cruel silence. Their leaders had no words left. Children hid in shelters, whispering to each other that maybe the galaxy had abandoned them. Even the bravest warriors lowered their heads, knowing the end had come. And then, the sky changed. At first it was nothing more than a shadow, a ripple among the stars, something vast shifting against the black canvas of night. The enemy noticed it too. Their scanners picked up movement beyond the system. Confusion spread. No reinforcements were expected. No allies would dare enter this battlefield. Yet something was coming. Something large. Something silent. The survivors on the planet looked up. For the first time, the fires in the sky dimmed, and through the smoke, new shapes appeared. Not enemy. Ships, not their fragile defenders, but something else, something colossal. Black steel hulls darker than the night itself, glowing veins of blue light across their sides. They moved with terrifying calm, like predators stepping onto the hunt. The Deathworlder fleet had arrived. The first alien survivor who saw them trembled, in awe and fear. They did not know if these were saviors or executioners. Whispers spread quickly in underground shelters. Someone answered the SOS. But who? Who are they? Then their question was answered not by rumor but by a voice. Across every frequency, in every language, in every desperate ear, the same words rang out. We received your call. We will handle this. The voice was human. It was calm, steady, and unshaken. No fear, no hesitation. For the aliens, it was unlike anything they had ever heard. The galaxy was filled with commanders who barked orders in desperation, leaders who shouted with anger or panic. But this human voice was cold as iron, confident as stone. It carried a promise. The battle was already decided. The enemy fleet reacted, instantly. Arrogant and unchallenged for decades, they turned their weapons toward the newcomers, preparing to crush them as they had crushed every other world. Hundreds of warships pivoted, targeting the Deathworlder fleet. Their commanders laughed at the sight of primitive Earth ships, unaware of what they truly faced. To them, humanity was still a myth, a bedtime story of warriors that could not exist. They would soon learn the truth. Inside the flagship, the human commander stood tall. His eyes studied the battlefield calmly, as if he had seen it all before. Around him, officers readied weapons, calculating trajectories with cold precision. Mark their positions, the commander said quietly. When they fire, end them. And so, the waiting began. The enemy fired first. A storm of plasma bolts and energy beams filled the void, streaking toward the Deathworlder ships like a river of fire. The survivors on the planet closed their eyes, certain the newcomers would be torn apart. But when the storm reached the fleet, something unbelievable happened. The Deathworlder ships moved as one. Shields of blinding energy flared, bending. The enemy fire away as though it were nothing more than rain against stone. And then, in perfect silence, the fleet answered. One broadside volley. Just one. and entire enemy squadrons vanished. Ships broke apart in bursts of light, their wreckage scattering into the void. What had taken minutes to prepare ended in seconds. The survivors watching from below gasped as the enemy formation collapsed. In the shelters, children clutched their parents as the once invincible oppressors were destroyed before their eyes. The alien leader, hidden in a bunker, whispered the words none of them had dared believe. The Deathworlders are real. The battle had only just begun, but the truth was already written. The SOS had been answered. Humanity had arrived, and with their arrival came a promise. The galaxy would never be the same again. The first strike had been a warning, yet it shook the battlefield like a thunderclap across the stars. The enemy fleet, once confident and untouchable, reeled in disbelief. Hundreds of ships had been destroyed in mere seconds, their hulks spinning into the void like broken toys. For the first time in years, their commanders felt something alien. To them, fear. But the Deathworlders were not done. The flagship of Earth's fleet shifted forward, its engines burning like suns. The black steel hull reflected no light, only the glow of its own power. Around it, destroyers, cruisers, and carriers formed wings of perfect formation, their movements sharp and precise as if controlled by one mind. Every ship's weapon systems lit up in sequence, casting eerie blue and white light across the darkness. The void trembled with the silent promise of destruction. On the enemy side, panic spread. Orders screamed through their channels. More ships surged forward, desperate to overwhelm the humans with numbers. Missiles streaked, plasma cannons fired, energy lances cut through space like lightning. The void became a storm of fire, and then Earth's fleet unleashed its fury. The first wave came from the carriers. Doors opened along their massive hulls, releasing swarms of smaller craft. Fighters, sleek and angular, built not for defense, but for slaughter. They darted between enemy blasts, moving with unnatural speed. Their weapons fired beams so sharp they sliced through enemy armor like knives through cloth. Squadrons of enemy fighters tried to intercept, but the humans danced around them with terrifying precision. Within minutes, the skies near the planet belonged to humanity. Next came the destroyers. They opened fire with rail cannons, weapons that hurled projectiles faster than thought itself. Each shot tore through enemy warships, leaving glowing trails of wreckage behind. One destroyer fired a salvo that ripped 3 enemy cruisers in half before they even had time to react. The survivors on the planet below watched with wide eyes as bright streaks of fire painted across their sky, followed by explosions like silent suns. But the deadliest strike came from the flagship. Its main weapon, hidden until now, came alive. A vast cannon unfolded from the ship's core, its barrel glowing brighter and brighter until the light consumed the screen. When it fired, it did not simply destroy, it erased. A column of energy shot across the void, cutting straight through the heart of the enemy fleet. Dozens of warships vanished in an instant, reduced to drifting dust and silence. The shockwave alone knocked other vessels off course, leaving them exposed for the smaller human ships to finish. The enemy tried to retreat. Their commanders shouted frantic orders to pull back, to regroup, to survive. But the Deathworlders gave no mercy. Humanity did not simply win battles, they ended them. Every retreating vessel was hunted down. The fighters chased them into the edges of the system, ensuring none escaped. Humanity had no interest in leaving survivors who might regroup and return. On the ground, the aliens who had begged for help fell to their knees. The sky, once filled with the fire of their enemy, now burned with the fire of salvation. Yet even in their gratitude, they trembled. For they realized what the legends had warned. The Deathworlders were not saviors. They were storms, walking wars, destruction made flesh. To be saved by them was to witness fury beyond imagination. Inside, the flagship, the human commander, stood tall, his eyes fixed on the battlefield. Around him, reports flowed in, enemy squadrons eliminated, capital ships destroyed, victory assured. Yet his expression never changed. To him, this was not triumph. This was duty. He had not come to inspire awe, He had come because someone had called for help. Still, the galaxy would remember what they had seen. The rumors of Earth's hidden strength were no longer rumors. Entire empires would tremble when they learned how a fleet thought extinct had returned, and with it a force the stars had not seen in centuries. The survivors below finally dared to believe. Their people were alive. Their world was not lost. But as they gazed at the colossal human ship still hanging above their skies, one truth echoed louder than all others. The call for help had not only brought salvation, it had brought Earth's fury. And fury, once unleashed, could never be caged again. When the last enemy warship burned into dust, silence fell across the stars. The battlefield, once filled with fire and screams of war, now drifted with wreckage and glowing trails of debris. The survivors on the alien world stepped out of their shelters, blinking at the sudden quiet. Their skies were no longer painted with the red glare of bombardments, but with the deep shadow of massive black ships hanging above like gods. For the first time in weeks, they could breathe. But relief was not the only emotion. Awe, gratitude, and fear mixed together as they stared at the Deathworlder fleet. These were not ordinary saviors. They had arrived like storms, fought like demons, and crushed an enemy that no empire had dared face. To be saved by such beings was to understand that the myths had been true all along. Humanity had not vanished. Humanity had not grown weak. They had only been waiting, hiding, preparing for a day like this. The alien leaders gathered in their damaged halls, their voices shaking as they tried to put into words what had just happened. "They answered us," one whispered, his hands trembling. "The Deathworlders heard us." Another shook her head, unable to speak, only staring at the images of human warships still circling above. For generations, their people had believed Earth was nothing but a rumor, a story to frighten children. Now they knew better, and the truth was far more terrifying than the stories. In orbit, the human flagship remained steady. Inside, the commander studied the broken battlefield. Reports confirmed total victory. No enemy remained to threaten this system. Yet he gave no order to celebrate. His voice was calm when he spoke. "Secure the skies, provide aid to the survivors, then prepare to depart." One officer hesitated. "Sir, the aliens, they wish to thank us." The commander's eyes did not leave the screen. "They will thank us by surviving. That is enough." Down below, rescue pods launched from human ships, carrying supplies, medicine, and engineers to help stabilize the burning cities. For the survivors, it was overwhelming. The very beings who had destroyed an entire enemy fleet in hours were now kneeling among rubble, lifting children from ruins, giving water to the weak. Mercy and fury, both carried in the same hands. The aliens wept openly, unable to understand how such power could be both savior and executioner. Word spread quickly across the galaxy. Merchant ships that had fled carried tales of what they had seen. Secret transmissions leaked to powerful empires. Within days, every world in the known stars had heard the same story. An SOS was sent, and the Deathworlders answered. Entire armadas had been destroyed. The enemy, once unstoppable, had been wiped out like insects. And humanity, the forgotten myth, was real. In palaces of great alien rulers, fear grew. Some demanded alliances, others prepared their armies, but none of them slept easily. For they all asked the same question: if Earth has such power, what else are they hiding? Back on the alien world that had sent the SOS, a statue would one day be built. It would not be of their own people, it would not be of their own leaders. It would be of a towering human figure, cloaked in steel, holding a burning star in one hand and a shield in the other. At its base, carved into stone, would be the words spoken on the day the fleet arrived. "We received your call. We will handle this." But humanity did not stay. Once the survivors were safe, once the enemy was gone, the Deathworlder fleet turned away. Their engines lit up again, and in silence, they departed into the stars, vanishing as quickly as they had come. To the aliens, it was like watching gods disappear back into their heavens, yet the message they left behind would never be forgotten. Humanity had returned. The galaxy had seen their fury. And now every empire, every ruler, every soldier knew the truth. When Earth answered a call for help, the galaxy itself trembled. The SOS had summoned Earth's deadliest fleet, and from that day forward, nothing, not empires, not legends, not even the stars themselves, would ever be the same again.